Hello, I'm Michael White. I'm going to be reading from the 7th grade science textbook this morning, Chapter 1, Lesson 1, Science in the Natural World. My Planet Diary. The Wild Chimpanzees of Gombe. The following words are from the writings of Jane Goodall, a scientist who studied wild chimpanzees in Africa for many years. Once, as I walked through a thick forest in a downpour, I suddenly saw a chimp hunched in front of me. Quickly I stopped. Then I heard a sound from above. I looked up, and there was a big chimp there too. When he saw me, he gave a loud, clear, wailing "rah," a spine-chilling call that is used to threaten a dangerous animal. To my right, I saw a large black hand shaking a branch, and bright eyes glaring threateningly through the foliage. Then came another savage "rah" from behind. I was surrounded. Because Jane stood still, the chimps no longer felt threatened, so they went away. What skills do scientists use? Jane Goodall trained herself to become a scientist, or a person who does science. Science is a way of learning about the natural world. Science also includes all the knowledge gained by exploring the natural world. Scientists use skills such as observing, inferring, predicting, classifying, evaluating, and making models to study the world. Observing. Observing means using one or more of your senses to gather information. It also means using tools, such as a microscope, to help your senses. By observing chimps like the one in Figure 1, Jane Goodall learned what they eat. She also learned what sounds chimp makes and even what games they play. Observations can be either quantitative or qualitative. A quantitative observation deals with numbers or amounts. For example, seeing that you have 11 new emails is a quantitative observation. A qualitative observation deals with descriptions that cannot be expressed in numbers. Noticing that a bike is blue or that a lemon tastes sour is a qualitative observation. Inferring. One day, Jane watched as a chimp peered into a tree hollow. The chimp picked up a handful of leaves and chewed on them. Then, it took the leaves out of its mouth and pushed them into the hollow. When the chimp pulled the leaves out, Jane saw the gleam of water. The chimp then put the wet leaves back into its mouth. Jane reasoned that there was water in the tree. Jane made 3 observations. She saw the chimp pick up the dry leaves, put them in the hollow, and pull them out wet. But Jane was not observing when she reasoned that there was water inside the tree. She was inferring. When you explain or interpret the things you observe, you are inferring, or making an inference. Inferring is not guessing. Inferences are based on reasoning from what you already know. They could also be based on assumptions you make about your observations. See what inferences you can make about the chimps in Figure 2. Predicting. Jane's understanding of chimp behavior grew over time. Sometimes she could predict what a chimp would do next. Predicting means making a statement or a claim about what will happen in the future based on past experience or evidence. By observing, Jane learned that when a chimp was frightened or angry, its hairs stood on end. This response was sometimes followed by threatening gestures such as charging, throwing rocks, and shaking trees. Therefore, when Jane saw a chimp with its hair on end, she was able to predict that there was danger. Predictions and inferences are closely related. While inferences are attempts to explain what is happening or has happened, predictions are statements or claims about what will happen. If you see a broken egg on the floor by a table, you might infer that the egg had rolled off the table. If, however, you see an egg rolling toward the edge of a table, you can predict that it's about to create a mess. Classifying. What did chimps do all day? To find out, Jane's research team followed the chimps through the forest. They took detailed field notes about the chimps' behaviors. Figure 4 shows some notes about Jomio, an adult male chimp. Suppose Jane had wanted to know how much time Jomio spent feeding or resting that morning. She could have found out by classifying Jomio's actions. Classifying is the grouping together of items that are alike in some way. Jane could have grouped together all the information about Jomio's feeding habits or his resting behavior. Evaluating. Suppose Jane had found that Jomio spent most of his time resting. What would this observation have told her about chimp behavior? Before Jane could have reached a conclusion, she would have needed to evaluate her observations. Evaluating involves comparing observations and data to reach a conclusion about them. For example, Jane would have needed to compare all of Jomio's behaviors with those of other chimps to reach a conclusion. She would also need to have evaluated the resulting behavior data of Jomio and the other chimps. Making models. How far do chimps travel? Where do they go? Sometimes Jane's research team followed a particular chimp for many days at a time. To show the chimp's movements, they might have made a model like the one shown in Figure 5. The model shows Jomio's movements and behaviors during one day. Making models involves creating representations of complex objects or processes. Some models can be touched, such as a map. Others are in the form of mathematical equations or computer programs. Models help people study things that can't be observed directly. By using models, Jane and her team shared information that would otherwise be difficult to explain.